Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're doing well. In this video I'm going to be talking about a recent game of Conquest, the Last Argument of Kings against one of the locals in a bat rep between 100 Kingdoms and Spires. Just another match against one of the friendlies, one of the fellows, and I thought I'd pick this one because I've recently gotten some painting done on one of the Founders exclusives, which was probably the earliest one that I know of, and that is the Joust. We have this lovely little diorama here where the trees in the background, of course, are from my own my Flatmates collection. But the miniatures here, you get the two knights and this little jousting area with this massive block of resin on the ground. So this is pretty cool, and I just wanted to talk about Founders exclusives just in general. They're a lot of fun to paint, but they're extremely expensive. You guys may have also seen my St. George, which is also going to be shown in this particular game. But it's just really good to get them on the table after painting them, and I like the fact that although these are display pieces, they can be used in the actual game itself. So the guy on the left is there to represent a tourney champion, which is the 25-point upgrade you can give to your household knights that gives them the extra charge distance. And the guy on the left can just be used as a regular noble lord. But they are very, very detailed miniatures, and they're very distinct from the normal household knights unit. So what I've done here is I've obviously given the base a very dark brown sort of look with a lot of washes and just put your regular basing flock on it. I think what you're supposed to do is that this middle area is sort of where, you know, the tourney is not happening. Like if you're jousting, this ground is going to get cut up by horse hooves so much that grass isn't really going to grow on that. But I can't resist putting some foliage on the bases anyway, so I've just kept it underneath the little railing there. The other news from me that you guys might know is that I've recently bought a new camera because I use cameras for photogrammetry and obviously, glamour photos like this and my bat reps, as well as the stop motion I do, the live action stuff. So it just only made sense for me to buy a new camera eventually, and I finally upgraded to a mirrorless from the DSLR. I'm just getting used to using it, and this is a bit of an exercise on how to really get better results, but I'm still not really getting there. You've got to keep your camera obviously in a fixed position and get the exact lighting right and everything, but it's fun to learn it a bit more. And these miniatures obviously painted in my normal color scheme, but trying to get a little bit more of a different tone contrast in the actual red, orange of the Noble Lord and the purples of the bad guy, the Dark Knight here. You might also notice that the headgear for this guy on the right is actually not from the Founders exclusive miniature. The funny thing about that is that a piece of resin actually broke, or it wasn't sort of what it should be when I got it out of the box. But at this recent Conquest event, I managed to win this Weaver's Court miniature, and it comes with two head options for some reason. So I just snipped off the little antler part of the Weaver's Court miniature and put it on the Noble Lord Knight, and nobody seems to notice. So the guy on the left has the Weaver's Court headgear, which is kind of fitting really, because even though he's got this little bat head here, it kind of does sort of fit him. If you weren't looking for it, if you didn't know about it, you probably wouldn't have noticed. So I like to imagine this guy has sort of just managed to venture off into the lands of the Weaver Courts, and he's just killed some random Fey unit and ripped off their headgear for himself. This is the best photo I managed to get of the actual tourney champion himself from low angle. He just looks very imposing there, very, very gothic. And of course, the Noble Lord, which is the miniature that really stands out because of the colors more so than anything else. So I tried to get a few photo-ups here. This is one of the better ones. The closer you get to my miniatures, the more imperfections you see. For example, the red and the blue not really being cleaned up on the lance very well, but some of the hack and slash job actually does turn out quite well, and the blending on the actual cloth is quite cool. So, I just really wanted to make a list which used household knights, but of course, the other thing is that I've now got in my possession 2 units of Ashen Dawn. This warband here is typically the better way to run 100 Kingdoms at the moment. Sadly, they do need to change. We are in need of an update. People typically use the Sealed Temple rather than Crimson Tower. I'm just a bit of a fan of the Crimson Tower Knights because once you do get the charge off, to get the points value out of them, keeping them alive is just a bit more useful. And if you only got one opportunity to charge, might as well make it count. And you can sort of get stuck into a lot of combats where the Sealed Temple aren't really fighting their way out of it at all, because they've got no brutal impact, no terrifying, no nothing. They're really only there for the mobility to try and pick off weaker units, which isn't always possible. You know, in a game of Last Argument, your opponent might have a lot of units, they might be ready for you, you charge in the front, get nothing done, you get countercharged. So Crimson Tower Knights I do like. The thing about Sealed Temple though is that because they're cheaper, you can afford more Ashen Dawn, and that's usually the rationale for people taking them in general, right? The other thing about the Priory Commander is that he starts with Clash 4 and he has Terrifying, so he makes the most use of Eccentric fighting style out of any character really, other than the Noble Lord on foot. So I do like this on him, because after you get the charge off and you're there trying to fight your way out of something big, this is useful. It also makes him an absolute monster when it comes to duels. Like if you're up against something which isn't likely to kill him, even with the re-rolling defense rolls on his side, it is a great opportunity to really put the fear of God on a lot of enemy characters. And the Terrifying does work in duels unless you're up against Old Dominion. But over here we have the Mounted Noble Lord with 2 Household Knights and just 2 bare bones cheap units. I've even downgraded 1 Mercenary Crossbowmen to Militia Bowmen, partly because I wanted the points for other stuff, but partly because my second unit of Bowmen isn't really out of the box yet and assembled. Otherwise, I would prefer the Crossbowmen rather over the Bowmen, because they really just get in the way. They don't cause any shooting damage, whereas the Mercenary Crossbowmen also do shooting damage. Didn't have any points left really to make the knights into anything more. They're just your bare bones knights, really. And the good thing about them, I suppose, is that for 140 points, if you're not getting any damage done, you can just camp them on objective. They just score, and there's 140 points, which is not bad. But if you do see that enemy unit of shooters off the background, like those Selenoi or something like that, just trying to march over and kill them is good. And they work quite well against Legionnaires as well in that mid-game, because Legionnaires just charge straight into the middle of the table. You bring the knights on, and then the next turn you could charge the Legionnaires, and then the knights should beat the Legionnaires because of their defense 4. So there is that. The other weird thing about this list that I'm trying out is the Chapter Mage of School of Water. So the fun thing here is that when you've got 6 men-at-arms with Bastion here, it can be quite hard to break them. Unless you're like a Tonto or a Thunder Riders or something. A lot of things are just going to be picking off 2 or 3 stands of men-at-arms, which won't be enough to break them, because there's 7 including the character, and then you can heal them, and you heal quite a lot with School of Water. So Ninua's Tears, it's automatic 3 plus your successes and your Wizard 6, and if you put Focused in there as well, typically you're getting like 4 or 5 successes off plus the initial 3, so you could be healing back approximately, 1.5 to 2 stands per turn, which means that they don't go away easily, and you can just camp them somewhere for a while, and your opponent is sort of sticking things to them like a tar pit, and that gives you an opportunity to charge in there with the mounted stuff like the Knights, Crimson Towers, Ashen Dawn, etc. So I don't think it's the best thing in the world, but I definitely want to try it in more games. And the Elysian Fragment, of course, nowhere near as good as it is on the Priest, because the Priest gives his unit Blessed. The Chapter Mage can't really buff these guys. They just clash 2 with Inspired. But with Relentless Drill, you're still putting out a few hits in the front, and if you do happen to be up against something which has relatively low wounds but a lot of defense, I think the Siegebreaker comes to mind, or if you are up against Ashen Dawn, which haven't attacked yet, even getting like 6 wounds on like Bone Golems, anything like that, will be definitely worth taking a 20-point item for. So if that can sort of shave down that threatening enemy unit so they can't wipe out the men-at-arms, you can then heal back, and over a long period of time, that may work. So in theory, it is viable, but I think that with the Fireball also being so much damage, I doubt that the optimal thing to do overall is to take Water. I want it to be good, but I think Parabellum still have some work to do in that regard. So let's get to this game. Playing against my opponent's Spires list, he is, before I get into it actually, he is using an undespised list, but he has some Avatara in it and the Lineage Highborn, and he paid the 60 points for Pheromantic Override, and he's got the Siege Breaker, so that stuff doesn't really play into undespised very well, but he's just playing around, a bit of a casual game. We're not going to worry too much about the competitive nature of the lists. Let's just enjoy ourselves and enjoy the pictures of the minis, shall we? So I've got the Bowmen and the Mercenaries coming on turn 1. This is my light troops. I pick one, the other one comes on automatically. So the Bowmen just come through the middle of the table, and the Crossbowmen to the right-hand side. This is the Maelstrom mission. So early on in the game, the sides the middle's worth more points, and then it flips to the sides for 3 or 4 turns, then it goes to the middle, but it's there's no bonuses for killing troops at all, and there's no bonuses for having more than one zone. It's just a pure objective grab all the way through. So my opponent's got a large block of Force Drones with a Ferromancer in the middle, and he's got the other block of Force Drones with the Biomancer to the side there. So they're just coming up in the middle and on his right-hand flank respectively. You can see a big old house in the middle of the table as well. I'm just going to see if I can fix my screen cap. It appears to be... Yeah, let's just drag this down a little bit. That looks a little bit better. So next image here, turn 2, we bring on the Mage and the Men-at-Arms. I want to bring them as soon as possible because they really want to hang out with the Force-Grown Drones, knowing that the Force-Grown Drones are never going to be able to kill like 3 stands of Bastioned up Men-at-Arms. I'll be able to heal back, he'll be able to heal back, and that effectively allows me to neutralize one part of the battlefield for a while. Then all my heavies can show up and they can mop up elsewhere, and hopefully that will be good work done by the Mage. We're also picking up 1 unit of Knights as well. So the beautiful Men-at-Arms, 4 wide, 2 deep, show up to the left here against the Biomancer's unit. He does have Lethal Demise, but the thing is, this is the ideal unit to be fighting against Lethal Demise because I'm always going to be getting the Bastion off before I attack him, and then with Defense 4, I'm unlikely to take that many hits from Lethal Demise. I then heal them back, and neither unit is going to really do much damage to the other in the long run, and that's perfect for me. I just want this particular side of the battlefield to be locked up. His unit is not scoring, whereas mine is, and that's where you start to see some of the beauty of the Water Mage, is that she's just there to delay and allow you to win the game elsewhere with Ashen, Dawn, Crimson Tower. So, Militia Bowmen, represented by the archers here, the longbows, they're actually Militia Bowmen, they're just hanging out doing absolutely nothing. He then brings on his Avatara. A little bit out of focus here. This is automatic mode on the new camera. Really what you want to do is get that f-stop to a point where you've got a really wide field of vision, but because I'm taking photos on the fly, I kind of had to use automatic mode, otherwise I'm sort of wasting my opponent's time setting up the shot, if you know what I mean. So I then bring on my Knights on the right-hand side here. This is the beautiful unit of Knights, of course, with the Noble Lord from the Founders exclusive. The great thing is you can take it off that little tawny grounds base and put it on a regular cavalry stand here, and you get a perfectly good, Knights unit, which is lovely. And they're of course, there to take that right flank objective well away from the Avatara. So he sees that and brings in Strix nearby to them. These Strix will have the Undespise regeneration on them. I find, though, that it can be quite easy to break unit of Strix because they're so fragile, so you've got to be very careful about what kind of targets you send your Strix after realistically in lists like this. Don't get me wrong, I think they are good, but you've got to be careful. I think the Knights are probably not the best target for them because the Knights have Defense 4, very good against the Lethal Demise, and then when they hit the Strix, they probably will break them, so got to be careful. Alright, so overview here, Ferromancer moving through to the middle, and then we go to turn 3. So bringing on Noble Lord, first card, Mercenaries, Men-at-Arms, Ashen Dawn showing up, Crimson Tower, more Ashen Dawn, Militia Bowmen, Knights, Mage. So he comes on here with his unit of 4 Brute Golems. There's one hiding behind the tree, don't be fooled. There is a Brute Golem behind that. The brute drone behind that tree there. He takes them in blocks of 4, which... I don't know, man. Like, if you do so much damage that you kill 3 of them, the breaking and shattering of the unit mathematically will clip out the last one as well, as you guys may know. Killing 2 stands within 1 turn breaks them, and then if you kill half of the remaining guys, which is 1 more stand, they will be shattered. So be careful about that, but they do have regeneration, so long as they can come up against a target which doesn't completely wallop them, they can be very, very good value. Over here, we have the crossbows leaving their trees, and they're going there to shoot the Strix, and really hoping the Strix charge them, because then the Knights can just flank them, so my opponent's not going to be that dumb. Over here, we've got some more brute drones. Again, there's the unit of 4. Got to be careful about that, but they are coming in behind the force-grown drones. This is sort of a tactic I worry about a little bit with Spires, not in the sense that I worry about facing it, but I worry for their sake that when you've got drones to the front like this, they can block the things behind them once your opponent attacks in the front, and you know, you kind of miss out on opportunities to outmaneuver your opponent this way as Spires in some games. Right, over here, the men-at-arms making the very bold decision to bastion up and just march straight forward, allowing the force-grown drones to simply attack them whenever they want. And we are doing this because the force-grown drones just don't really pack that punch. They don't really have the buffs. Even with the Biomancer there, they're not going to beat a defense 4 block of infantry, and I want to see what healing the Mage can actually do. We have the first unit of Ashen Dawn arriving towards the center. These guys are going directly opposite the Avatar, and my opponent has not invested in Cascading Degeneration. So that is kind of a bit of an eyebrow raiser, because I think it's very, very good ability. But the Avatar are typically, even with their free attack, they probably won't wipe out a unit of Ashen Dawn, and once I can lock them in place, the second unit of Ashen Dawn should be able to double team them and crush them if they're too aggressive. So my opponent is moving to this forest here, just getting ready, but even with that big block of 5 Avatar plus the boss, the Highborn, he's going to lose his impacts coming out of the forest, and the Ashen Dawn are a little bit too far away to double clash, and I've got my nearby infantry to get in his way. On the extreme left, we're moving the Crimson Tower in here, and the reason for this is that if he does engage my men-at-arms with his force-grown drones, that combat's going to go on forever, and if he doesn't deploy anything else on this left-hand flank, the Knights are going to be able to flank charge the force-grown drones, and that will do some serious damage to them, giving me control of that objective. I'm expecting him to counter-deploy with something like a Siege Breaker or a Abomination, because then he can sort of fend that off a little bit. So, Biomancer and the force-grown drones moving up. We're, I think, getting to a point where he doesn't charge me. Can't quite remember. I think he just sort of sat there in range of the objective just to stop me from actually scoring it. So that's a contest there from him. Over here, a second unit of Ashen Dawn. As you can see, I've been doing some painting. The middle guy and the guy on the left are sort of almost done. The guy on the right, not so much, but my color scheme just takes a while to get up and running, and I'm getting pretty lazy, getting other projects going on, so we'll see. We then have the Militia Bowmen just carefully moving in. You can see that the corner of this stand here is just getting in the way of the Ashen Dawn, because that makes it more awkward for the Avatar to march in there and get a big frontage of like 5 stands on the Ashen Dawn. And if they charge one of these units, they risk getting countercharged by me, so I'm just making my opponent's life very, very difficult with the positioning. What you want to do is you want to squeeze out your opponent's opportunities like a python. Just remove all of their good plays and their good positionings, force them to come forward into awkwardness and badly placed units so that you can actually have an advantage in the long run. That's a great way to play Conquest Last Argument at a bit more of an advanced level. Okay, so we now have the combat happening, and I must say that this combat inflicts very little casualties on either side, but I will be taking a lot of photos of it. We then have the marvelous St. George and the Dragon Founders exclusives. So I'm the proud owner of 2 of the 100 Kingdoms Founders exclusives. You might call me a sucker. I spend a lot of money that I don't need to, but it is what it is. Some people get to have a job, and you know it helps the economy. So these guys are coming towards the middle. The thing here is that because there's the house up front of them, and there's the combat number 1 on the left between the men-at-arms and the force-grown drones, and the other unit of force-grown drones on the right, these guys can pick which direction they go. On the right, if the other force-grown drones come further forward, these guys can charge there. So I'm sort of creating a no man's land out in the midfield. If he does bring his brute drones through, I might get that opportunity. Otherwise, if something clears up in the left, like if I lose too many stands of men-at-arms, these guys can clip into the force-grown drones. And again, even against lethal demise, having defense 4 there is very, very good for coping with that. Alright, so overview here, you can see that he's actually just repositioning a little bit, moving to the side, a little bit back, and just being cagey and not actually committing. On this side, we've got the Strix going to be dealing with the Knights after I've moved them up towards the objective. So they march themselves in here. I think they did 1 wound on the Knights from the charge clash, but that's about it. We then go into turn 4. So it's going to be Mage initially to heal back the damage that the Men-at-Arms have suffered. Then Men-at-Arms then will attack the Force-Grown Drones, and then we'll have the Crimson Tower. They have been counter-deployed by an Abomination. I just didn't show you a picture on the left-hand flank, so that's why they'll need to go first. And of course, all the Ashen Dawn going last in case his Avatar decide to push up. So this is an overview of the battlefield. If you look carefully, there's a Siegebreaker that's not on the field that's yet to deploy. His Abomination have come in here as predicted to stop the Crimson Tower Knights from getting into the flank of the Force-Grown Drones. I have picked my Mage to go first with the Men-at-Arms because, as you can see, I've lost like a stand of guys, so I want to heal them back fully and then Bastion and then attack the Force-Grown Drones. Having Bastion will be important because if he's picked his Abomination as his first card and the Abomination charges through to the Men-at-Arms as the first activation, that will kill a ton of them. And even though I'll be able to countercharge with the Crimson Tower Knights, I will potentially lose this entire unit. Don't really want that because I'm very precious about my Water Mage. So that's why I'm activating the Mage first and then the Crimson Towers to go after the Abomination. If the Abomination does charge the Crimson Towers, not to worry, even though he's got, you know, a lot of attacks and terrifying Crimson Tower Knights at defense 4, I feel like they'll be okay. And I do have this juicy unit of Knights at the back here to turn around and go after him as well. So I got very lucky here and I won the Supremacy roll, which is lovely, happy days. So the Mage activates, heals everybody, so all of the stands come back. And then she uses Elysian Fragment, so I can now go after the Force-Grown Drones with Smite. Not that it matters, they're only defense 2 anyway, but still, you may as well use it while you have it. And these guys do a bit of damage to the Force-Growns, but don't really roll that well and only kill a few stands. So, actually, when I say a few stands, it does break them, actually. It brings them down to like 3, but the thing is, there's so many sneaky tricks that the Biomancer could do to get back into healing. That's that kind of list, really, that these guys are not going to be going anywhere. So his Abomination charges into my Crimson Tower Knights, and it does some damage, but again, we're talking about defense 4 guys here. The Abomination doesn't have that many attacks, and we managed to defend the flank of our Men-at-Arms. Sorry, I completely misspoke. The entire sequence of this is that the Mage goes first, chains into the Men-at-Arms who activate next because she's in the regiment. Then the Biomancer activates, and what he does is he rallies the unit, and then the unit activates and heals from the Underspire ability. And then after that's resolved, then my Knights charge his Abomination and absolutely wreck it. So that's what happens there. The Abomination then attacks back and does a bunch of wounds, but he's almost dead. So, excuse me, it's been a couple of days since I played the game. That's actually how it turned out there. Right, we have the Strix against the Household Knights. Of course, me winning the Supremacy roll was huge because, as you can see, all of the following activations fall in line where I get to go first on all of these little encounters. We both, in our heads, did that thing where we go, okay, what's the most important conflict? It's the Men-at-Arms against the Force-Grown Drones. What's the next one? It's the Crimson Tower against the Abomination. What's the next one? It's the Knights versus the Strix. And whoever wins the Supremacy roll goes first in each of those different rungs of the ladder because you've sequenced them the same as your opponent. So this game could have got off to a really bad direction had I lost that roll. So I was very lucky there, but we have another lovely photo of that beautiful noble lord from the joust, and he is kicking some butt. Over here, the Militia Bowmen, deciding to be annoying as heck, double march sideways in front of the Ashen Dawn, just because even though he's scoring there, it just gives my opponent just such an awkward turn where it's like, well, do I march up? Do I kill the Militia Bowmen? Do I just stay there? And if he stays there, then the Ashen Dawn sort of double march through and charge him, etc., etc. So I just want to see what he does. And I've even got some Crossbowmen moving up. And on the extreme right-hand flank, my Knights should be able to take that objective unless he puts just the Siegebreaker on that one flank. So I'm just causing him some pressure here by delaying a bit. We've got plenty of time. So he does decide to come in here against the Militia Bowmen, but without attacking them. And his thinking is that he's still within range of the objective, and I can't move through my own guys with the Knights of the Ashen Dawn. The reason why I think this is not the best play in the world is because it's going to take him like 3 turns to catch up with the Siegebreaker, and ideally you want the Siegebreaker attacking the Ashen Dawn at the same time that the Avatar are in combat with them. This also gives me a really nasty play here where I could, if I wanted to, withdraw with the Bowman and then activate the Ashen Dawn. I can't do it this turn, but next turn I could. And that will allow me to just charge Clash, and that would be very destructive. Not to mention, I've actually got a second unit of Ashen Dawn on the right hand of your screen there, which can go on the flank of the Avatar at some point. So, yeah, not looking great. But if there was a big old Siegebreaker right here in the middle of the photo, ready to attack the Ashen Dawn as soon as they come through the side there, that is a completely different story. And I feel like if he'd waited for that, that would be a better position. Over here, the Knights are beating up on the Strix, who are broken, so they will not be able to heal. And we have the Crimson, sorry, we have the Militia Crossbowmen coming on the flank here at effective range to pick them off. So that's the beauty of having that little Crossbowman unit there to do that. Over here, we have the Brute Drones double marching through the Ferromancer's unit to get the other side. The Ferromancer is the Warlord, able to give everybody rerolling and resolve checks. And these guys are now open to move past this eventually, or maybe reform and get through. But they'll be up against my Knights, potentially. Speaking of Knights, we have the Knights of the Crimson Tower as well. And I've just brought them through here. This is the Priory Commander's unit. I've formed them up 2 by 2 because it's more about the impact hits than anything. And this gives them an angle to go in against the Avatara or scoot past them and go after the Brute Drones. I can choose either target. So coming in very late in the turn is beautiful for these guys. And I could also go for the Supremacy turn for Blessed on a lot of things coming up. The Knights over here, they have an opportunity to march charge the Brute Drones, but I don't really need to take it. Now they've got the Crimson Tower Knights there. What I want to do is keep a close eye on this particular stand of Men-at-Arms right here. If the unit gets whittled down to just losing that stand on the side, these guys could charge in on the corner, wiping out the Force-Grown Drones, Men-at-Arms heal up, go into the Brute Drones, and then suddenly I'm actually scoring on that flank, which would be lovely. Finally, we have the Siegebreaker slithering and stomping his way onto the table. I don't know if he slithers or stomps, probably both. But he's going for that forest, and he's just so late. Like, he needs to be bashing with his wonderful smite onto those, Ashen Dawn. Like, the Knights of the Ashen Dawn are probably one of the toughest things in the entire game. And this guy is, like, the most, hittiest thing in the entire game. So it's like Unstoppable Force meets a movable object, but in this case, Unstoppable Force will win in terms of damage output. But of course, he will still die to the Knights of the Ashen Dawn when they attack him multiple times. And with only so many attacks, he's not going to kill all of them at once, so it's still going to be a bit of a fight. Speaking of fights, we have this unit going to march charge into the flank of the Avatara here. And because the Siegebreaker is still, a couple of turns away, I'll have one turn to just do a full round of attacks into the Avatara. They are in a position where they're already engaged with the Militia Bowmen, so they won't be able to get a full weight of attacks onto the Knights of the Ashen Dawn, which really cripples my opponent. As you can see, he's kind of just put himself in a bad position. So we're going to go with the Crimson Tower first to charge the Brute Drones. Then we're going to go with the Ashen Dawn against the Avatara, and then the the Mercenary Crossbowmen. Working our way all the way through to the Ashen Dawn at the end there, because we're expecting the Militia Bowmen to die in front of the Avatara, with the Mage going towards the very end, because I'm expecting her to need to heal back the Men-at-Arms. So let's have a look. This is an overview of the battlefield. On the right-hand side, I'm completely in charge of the scoring there. He's out of units. He can't bring anything else on, so I'm going to be able to score there for the rest of the game, unless the Siegebreaker goes in that direction, which I know he's not going to. In the middle here, my opponent's got a lot of strength, but he's kind of boxed himself in positionally, so we're not going to see this go very well for the Spires for a little bit. On the left-hand side, if the Abomination can pick off the last of the Crimson Tower Knights and the Force-Grown Drones can eventually beat the Men-at-Arms, then he's going to score here and work his way through. So that could be a fairly even game, but the problem is that the Men-at-Arms, with the beautiful healing, is actually working out very well. So long as you put your men-at-arms against something which can't really do that much damage to them, you're fine. As long as you're not up against like massive amounts of cleave and terrifying or whatever, they're a decent unit. So I still would recommend some practice games with them. On paper, maybe not that good, but I still think they have a bit of a place. So we'll see. All right, how does this turn work out? So we have the Biomancer bringing back a ton of Force-Grown drones and attempting to damage the men-at-arms who are not Bastioned, but still not really succeeding. We then have the Crimson Tower Knights finishing off the boy here. So Inspire Clash on the Abomination, able to kill him. The Avatara will clash because the Lineage Highborn is using like the double clash or whatever. So she does the free clash action, which wipes out the Militia Bowmen. A terrible thing to use Pheromantic Override on. And then going for the reform and then a clash into the Knights of the Ashen Dawn, which does absolutely nothing to them because this is Supremacy turn. They've got Hardened. He's not got Inspired and the Defense 4 with rerolls. It's just an awful situation for Avatara. So unfortunately, they now set up the charge from the other side with the other Ashen Dawn. It's just so painful. So these Ashen Dawn strike back. They do a world of pain to the Lineage Highborn and her friends, but lovely photo here. Really enjoy painting these guys as always, and I've just got a few more highlights to touch up on him. I think a few more rounds of white onto his shining non-metallic metal blue armor. Over here, with the Abomination taken down and these Crimson Tower Knights activated to do so, the Brute Drones unfortunately roadblock behind the Force-Grown Drones, so they have to reform and move around. And of course, being in a forest means that if I charge with the Crimson Tower Knights, I won't be able to get impact hits on his Brute Drones. He should be eventually able to beat them and move past and then get into the flank of the Men-at-Arms, killing them and sort of controlling the flank for the Spires in the long run here. Abomination, seeing if he can go after the men-at-arms here, so the Mercenary Crossbowmen, but not really able to. He's just waddling his way up. We've got the Ferromancer doing some Ferromancy things, putting out some buffs into the guys in front of him. And there's the big old Spires creature, the Siegebreaker, just waddling up. I think he attempted a charge but failed it. Over here, these knights, although they look gorgeous, they're just going to sit there and pose for photographs. They don't really need to do anything else. They're just on the flank. We then have the Priory Commander himself doing a march charge into the Brute drones. And this one's pretty nasty because it's the Supremacy turn, so they get to use Blessed on their impact hits, and they absolutely crunch these guys, breaking them, of course, so that they can't use regeneration when it comes to their turn. Very, very rough. Okay, and there's another beautiful photo of the Priory Commander. Over here, we have some more fighting going on. These guys just refusing to die. They activate, they put Bastion up, and they whack back against the Force-Grown drones, killing even more of them. We have the Ashen Dawn charging in against the Lineage Highborn and pretty much obliterating her at this point, even though we're going to get two guys in base contact. That's just all the impact hits and all of the battering and the hammering. So, end of that turn, we're reduced to just one Avatara and one Lineage Highborn surviving. And on the left, my opponent is actually losing a few stands of Force-Grown drones, which didn't fully come back. And in the middle, we've got the Priory Commander. He's got his Siegebreaker yet to join combat, and I've got my two units of Knights still out on the fringes. So we want to go first with the Crimson Tower Knights, in both units, in fact, because if he wins the roll, I can always go with the other one that I didn't activate, that he didn't sort of face off against in the activation. But if I win the roll, the Priory Commander can actually attack the Brute drones, and if he kills them, he could charge the Ferromancer's unit behind them, which would be awesome. So I do manage to lose the roll, and he charges the other unit of Crimson Tower Knights with his Brute drones and does smash them up a bit. But the cool thing about that is that it allows me to activate my other Crimson Tower Knights before he activates his other Brute drones, and these guys hammer out some severe damage on the Brute drones, killing only one stand, but note that he was broken in the previous turn, right? And because he hasn't activated them yet this turn, he's still broken this turn, and when I kill one more stand, they start broken, they've lost half their stands, 2 down to 1, and they become shattered. And that, my friends, is a really good example of why it is dangerous to take a regiment of 4 stands in particular, because mathematically it's the easiest possible regiment to shatter. You lose your last brute drone, they go bye-bye, and I didn't need to inspire to achieve that, so I can simply charge straight into the Ferromancer's unit behind them, doing even more impact hits, and really getting the most out of Crimson Tower Knights. This is a great way to get value from them, really. And this is the guy with eccentric fighting style, so he's going to be able to have a lot of fun whacking on those Force Groans. Yeah, so this reduces the unit quite significantly. Of course, this guy not wanting to do a duel. We have the Lineage Highborn trying to get some more damage, but she just doesn't have the manpower here. Just a little bit too light on the ground, so no damage really on the Ashen Dawn, who proceed to wipe the floor with her and move into this forest. We then want to sort of take on the Siegebreaker later on. So yeah, over here the Mage easily reviving a lot of these boys and continuing to fight, and I continue to take photos, but nothing really changes in this fight. It's the eternal conflict of both sides healing like 2 stands a turn. Over here, so you can see the problem with the Siegebreaker. He can do a lot of damage to Ashen Dawn, but if there's 2 units of them, he's going to take a lot of hits from both sides. That's a bit iffy. So he moves into a spot where I can only really charge him with 1 unit at a time. I decide to be annoying and just hit him in the flank with the Crossbowmen to prevent him from charging me. Just allows me to have the initiative, which is hilarious. And we have the Knights doing absolutely nothing this battlefield, this game, just moving around here. They are there to try and deflect against the other brute drones once they win the combat against the Crimson Tower Knights on this side, which they haven't even done. There's 1 stand left. But another lovely photo here of the St. George Founders Exclusive sculpt. So just trying to show that off a bit. And yeah, so game's pretty over. This is the end result here, where I've got the Knights on the right-hand side flank. We do have another turn of, more combat here. A lovely photo here of the Mage against the Ferromancer in the unending combat. Although I think that that there was one particularly bad turn where the Men-at-Arms actually spiked the roll, and the Force Groans just rolled terribly on everything and pretty much got trashed. So I think I did wipe them out in the end. Siegebreaker, lovely close-up here, wiping out the crossbows as you'd expect. Over this side, we've got more battles between the Crimson Towers and the Force Drones. Speaking of Crimson Towers, this guy goes down against the Brute Drones. But you can see on the photo of the left here, the Men-at-Arms are finally dispensed with all of the Force Drones somehow. Don't know how they managed that, mostly luck. And, of course, Ashen Dawn going up against the Siegebreaker to eventually finish him off. But, yeah, that's pretty much end of it. We've got Men-at-Arms against Brute Drones, Ashen Dawn against Siegebreaker, Crimson Tower against Force-Grown Drones. Pretty much it. Stop taking photos at that point. Had a blast. Hope you guys are enjoying the quality of the photos from the new camera. I'm only going to improve with my photography skills, really getting the manual settings right and the photo editing. But yeah, a bit of a casual game. I've also been playing a lot on TTS, more so with the Wadroon, and finished the international tournament recently. So I'll have not so much a bat rep, but like a tournament report coming soon about that. So don't forget to hit me up with a like and a subscribe, please. So you will be aware of that content when it drops, because it'll be really good. All right, thanks guys. I'll catch you later.